Greetings, Carl Payne here with Desktop Projects. Today I'm going to show you how I paint yellow armor for specifically an Imperial Fist model, but you can really use this for any yellow miniature paint that you want to do. Alright, let's get started. You're going to need a couple colors for this. I start with Wild Rider Red from Citadel, but really any orangey red will do. I put it in a shaker bottle and use it for airbrushing. This first step is pretty straightforward. You really just want a base coat in this on top of a primer, since this color isn't really good straight onto plastic. You definitely want to use a proper primer to get your model there. I use a white primer because it really helps to increase the brightness of this color, and really you just want to spray your entire model down. Get as much coverage as you can. This will be your darkest color, so you want to make sure you get in the recesses and all of the interior crevices and things like that. The cleaner and better you make this initial base coat, the better the model's going to look at the end of the day. Go ahead and really inspect the model, make sure you got every crevice, make sure you didn't miss any spots. I left the cloak here undone because I planned on painting it later. The next thing you're going to want to do is we're going to basically apply a zenithal highlight of white. Now, I like to get a little more detailed than just straight zenithal. I like to highlight a few key points on Space Marines specifically. Most notably, I like to highlight the legs and kneecaps. They provide nice cylinders for doing this kind of non-metallic yellow, and really want to try and get those pretty bright. And try and follow your gut on where your lighting is. So if you're using overhead lighting, make sure you highlight that where appropriate. So the kneecaps, the head, the shoulder pads, etc. Those things are all going to see a lot more light. But if you decide to do off-center lighting or even bottom lighting, like if you've got some kind of glowing effect you want to do, make sure you're highlighting from that direction. Now, by doing this, you really want to try and build up a strong base contrast with this. You're trying to get a very high contrast look. You want it to go from that bright orange to a pure white, ideally, at your brightest spots. You're going to end up glazing over this white, but the brighter you get that white on this step, the more that yellow is going to pop at the end. So you'll see I make this head and the shoulder pads. I try and get those to be the brightest parts on the model, because since we're doing a top kind of centered light source, you really want that lighting to reflect that, and then your highlighting to reflect that. And again, I'm skipping the cloak here. I knew I was going to do that in a different method, which I will probably make a video for later. So go through and inspect it, make sure you've got all of your highlights where you want them, your brightest spots where you want them, and really just make sure this step is as perfect as you can get it. Because your success here will really determine how good that end result looks. I did go back and end up highlighting that cloak just to give a good base coat. Now this is where the magic happens. I use Craven. It's a really nice gold yellow from Minichair, and I can just put it straight in the airbrush. And you can order it in bulk. And so since I was painting a whole army of this yellow, ordered quite a bit. So you're really, for this step, you really want to just put on a very light yellow glaze. And you're going to do this in multiple layers. Your goal here is to get a nice bright golden yellow at your maximum levels of white, and then you're going to, because of the way you faded that white into that red, you should end up with a nice, almost orangey, almost a burnt umber darkness under this after we apply the wash. So on this step, you're really just glazing really lightly in multiple coats over your previously done white to just result in a nice crisp yellow. And again here, make sure you go through and catch all of the spots that you want. If a spot looks like it's too red, make sure you hit it with that yellow on the undersides. You really want a good solid covering, a good glaze over that white. Now that we've got this really nice yellow to work from, we're going to go through and selectively wash using this contrast paint. I like the Gorgonta fur. It gives a nice shading for yellow. I mixed that Gorgonta fur with, it's a 50-50 of the contrast medium and the Gorgonta fur. This provides pretty good surface tension, and I feel like it works a little better and is a little more controllable than just a straight GW wash. So your goal here is really to wash your hard line crevices. So for example, this first thing I wash is the foot, and you've got a really nice hard line crevice in there, and you want to try and differentiate those two surfaces. So get in there really careful, and you want to put a very small line of wash in each of these little crevices. And there's a picture at the end that shows all of those crevices that ended up getting washed, but really use your best judgment. If it's a darkened area, you really just want to wash just in those crevices. You don't want to get any of this on the yellow armor. If you happen to, just wipe it off with your finger, grab a brush full of water and kind of brush it off. But try and preserve as much of that nice yellow as possible. But really here we're just doing our part to push the contrast on this. Give us nice dark shadows and nice bright highlights. Because the closer you get to that, the more metallic this armor is going to look. This process does use a surprising amount of paint, so make sure you put enough on your wet palette. The other thing you can do with this step is shade some of the undersides of your parts of the model that you want a little darker. Sometimes, like for the undersides, the legs, or if you've got a really kind of concealed dark shadow area, you want it just a little bit darker than what the yellow and orange provided. So feel free to use this as a glaze in those areas. That's the nice part about, and that's one of the reasons I like using the contrast paints here versus the wash, is you can use this as both a glaze and a wash, and so you can kind of shade some of your pieces and create these nice shadows without losing your paint consistency as much. And here you can see the finished step. Notice how dark your shadows look now, and really how good your contrast looks just at this very step. The next thing we're going to add is just a pure white highlight. A lot of this is edge highlighting. I do use a few lines kind of on the legs to give it sort of that non-metallic metal look. Definitely thin your white down, just using a little bit of either Lamian medium, or I use a thinner medium here because it's a little less expensive. You can buy it in higher quantities. And really, again, you're edge highlighting here. I'm pretty liberal with this because again, that really does push your contrast. So this is where I maybe step away from the realism a little bit. I go through and highlight what the sun would hit, but also maybe just something I want your eye to be drawn to. So on a lot of edge highlighting, you really want to clip that edge with the side of your brush. And then for your face highlighting, so like on the pauldrons and your feet and your leg bracers, you want to use the tip of your brush to kind of create those nice thin lines to kind of create the illusion of that non-metallic metal. And really, follow your gut on where this lighting should be. Obviously, a white highlight shouldn't be on the underside of a foot or under a cape or anything like that. But again, if you want to draw the viewer's eye to something in particular, like a detail or an edge, use this to do that. Here's a good example of just that little tiny non-metallic metal line on the leg cylinder. Again, it's kind of an aesthetic choice, but I feel like it adds a lot of character. Now, if you're just doing a troop choice or some rank and file models, you don't have to go nearly as crazy with the white highlighting. A little goes a long ways if you've got a lot of models kind of all grouped together. But for the HQs, I tend to go a little heavier on the white highlighting, especially when the model is as detailed as this. And again, as you kind of progress towards the top of the model, you want to try and do a little more edge highlighting just to draw people's eye towards that center head. In general, you always want to try and make that the focal point of whatever you're painting. It really brings the whole thing together when you're painting kind of these Warhammer heroic style figures. And in general, it just makes everything look a lot better. Just take some time, look at it, get your last couple edges, make sure that you haven't missed any, add a couple white spots on areas you want your eye to get drawn to, but yeah, make sure you don't miss any spots, and you want to make sure everything kind of looks good to your eye. Your eye is you'll pick up stuff that you missed or areas that need a little more work. And that's it. That's our yellow armor tutorial. I've attached pictures at the end of the finished product and a few kind of work in progress, but really this is what I would consider to be done armor. If you liked this video, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to learn how to paint yellow armor. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it.